This is a hot topic, Cynthia, because a lot of the professionals I spoke to that said this exact sentence is, oh, my boss would never allow that. And I just want to put this statement out there is that we work for companies, they don't own us. They don't own our time. And as long as you are doing nothing nefarious or you are not working on their time on your side project and you're doing this path with my favorite word that you said, integrity and honesty, they really don't have any deciding factor in it, your employer.
Welcome to Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I am your host, Dr. Cynthia. With over 30 years in the corporate world as a single mom, cancer survivor, and often the only woman in the C-suite, I know the weight high-achieving women carry. Now, as an executive coach and international speaker, I help women reclaim their agency and challenge the norms that hold them back. This show is for ambitious women ready to lead with intention, featuring candid conversations with powerful leaders sharing the real stories behind their success. If you're ready to look up and step up, you're in the right place. And if you're ready to go a step further, join me on May 7th for my virtual working session, From Drift to Direction. I'll give you the tools and support to stop drifting and start leading with clarity. Reserve your spot today and use code CCL for the special $79 rate. Seats are limited. Details are in the show notes. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'm your host and your coach, Dr. Cynthia. If you are a woman who is feeling maybe a little bit of a struggle between what you love and what you aspire and exhaustion in your mind, body, spirit, soul, this episode is for you. I am so thrilled to have Elisha Meek with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about this incredible woman. She has had nearly 17 years in talent acquisition, something I know a little bit about, connecting people to life-changing opportunities. She is a two-time author. Her first book, Meek It Happen, using her last name, came out in 2024. And her upcoming book, Break Up with Burnout, which we're going to talk about, is due out in June of 26. She's also an entrepreneur and a burnout coach, in addition to her day job as a corporate professional. She's passionate about advocating for women, helping them reclaim their agency, finding purpose-driven work, and sustainable ambition. Say that twice, sustainable ambition. She's a reader, writer, animal advocate, which I love, and a future-focused legacy builder. Elisha, it's so wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was such a wonderful introduction. It humbled me hearing all that. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. That was so sweet. I'm so
Oh,
excited to be here.
well, I'm excited to learn from you because I think there is not a person listening that has not at some point had a moment of burnout or moments of burnout. And I love the title, Break Up with Burnout. So resonates. Talk to me. I love always hearing about people's origin stories. So, what was that pivotal moment where you said, this burnout thing is real and I feel like I need to address it?
Yes, thank you for asking. It's a huge piece of the entire reason why I wrote the book or am writing the book, Break Up with Burnout. And I do have an exact moment that was my pivotal time. And as you mentioned, I've been in the corporate space for 17 years. And about 7 years ago, I was in a very high pressure, high sales, high talent acquisition, high volume recruiting, and I had been spending 3 years in burnout. 3
Mm,
continuous years, and
wow.
Cynthia, I'll tell you, at the time, I didn't know I was in burnout. I really didn't. I thought it was what I called the tax of success. I was just, working 60 to 80 hours a week, saying yes to every project, overcommitting like crazy. I will admit that I have some characteristics of perfectionism and controlling, so that, allowed or had me taking on more than I could chew, but I knew it was working to the next level in my career. I was doing all of these things, taking on all the extra work, saying yes to everything because it was leading to a promotion, the next step in the ladder. And I know you'll
Mm,
appreciate that, with my heels on, climbing that ladder. And the moment of my breaking up with burnout was the day I did not get the promotion that I had been working so hard for. And that in just to clarify, the 17 years has been with the same organization. So I've been with the same company for the entire time in my professional career, and I was not given the promotion. It was given to an external candidate that had traditional management experience, which I didn't have management experience, but I had the tenure, the knowledge, and the work ethic.
mm,
So that was incredibly disheartening. That day that I did not get the promotion was an incomplete eye opener. And I was so distraught, so at the end of the rope, as we
yeah,
say. And this amazing thing happened. So I felt like in that day I was at my lowest low. And as you mentioned, I'm a recruiter. At the end of the day, I was interviewing this young lady for a sales position. And I always like to ask people, what is their dream career? Every time I'm interviewing, I like to find out what their dreams are. And her answer changed my life.
wow.
She told me, yeah, it's such, again, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I call it my lightning bolt moment because it hit me so hard. She said, I want to open a small bakery with my family. And that to me was it resonated that I want to open a small business. And for some context, I had just graduated college with a business degree, and I went to college late in life. And in other contexts, I am not a baker. Me and the kitchen do not get along. My
Me
my
either.
yeah, kudos to you. That's
Yeah.
my husband and I. We've lived in this house for 12 years. I've never used the oven once. But my mom and my sister we're from the South, born in Texas, and they're always making desserts. And we always joke that we're addicted to sugar in this family. And so after I left that interview, I texted my sister and I just the simple text that said, "Let's start a bakery. You do the baking and I do the business." And that moment, I tell you, Cynthia, I went from the lowest low
Yeah,
to the highest high. And I want to be clear, I was not ready to quit my career. That was
right.
not what I was looking for. I wasn't looking to leave my career. I had spent so many years building it, but I finally had something that I could build on my own, that I was the boss of. I didn't
Mm,
have anyone to report to. And that night, I went home and just started doing some research, literally the first Google search, how to start a business. And every day, I just spent 20 to 30 minutes on researching, planning, building. Then I established my LLC, and eventually, this business it was selling creative cereal treats like Rice Krispie treats in a variety of flavors. It was just a side hustle that my sister, my mom, and myself built on the side while working my full time career. And having that to focus my energy on actually made me fall back in love with my career.
mm,
It wasn't my entire identity anymore. I had
right.
something of my own. So that was
Yeah.
my literal breakup with burnout moment.
So there, first of all, I love everything about that story, and
Thank
and
you.
in several ways, and I'm going to point these out as we go along because I've been reflecting on our pre-call and just following your journey. You literally are in so many ways, and I say this with such gratitude and respect, the poster child of now near next, because what you just articulated is start working on your future today. right? You can do your day job with excellence and work on your future. And I know things changed and moved you in a different direction, and we'll get to
Yes.
that. But in that moment, for the woman listening, for the person listening that says, "Well, I have dreams of doing a lot of things. I would love to go be an esthetician or, start a real estate organization or whatever it might be." It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can continue to have a side hustle while having a day job. I'm a big fan of that. My thought partner Kimberly Rath often talks about we should have 7 streams of income, and so having a side hustle can be a great addition. But you really put that dream into the universe. You did the steps to get there, set up the LLC, did the research on how to create the business, right? You didn't do it overnight. You didn't have a storefront the next day and start and eat the
Right.
elephant in one bite. You put a plan together and you did it while continuing to do your day job where you still are, right?
Yes.
With excellence. And I admire that so much. And I hope the person listening that has been thinking about their dreams and aspirations, and they keep kicking the can down the road, and it's not time yet, I'm not ready yet, I can't afford to quit my day job, thinks about alternative ways to chase that dream, because you did exactly that. Now, at some point, things changed personally, and you guys ended up moving away from the business. Talk a little bit about, I don't wanna get too personal, but talk a little bit about that change,
Sure.
because I think it has a lot to do also when to know that the passion has shifted or the purpose has shifted and something else is on the horizon.
Great question, Cynthia. And that is it. And I do talk about it in the book, Breakup with Burnout, that when you're building something, it is what you're building right now, but it could take you in so many different directions. So just be open to all opportunities. And I love that you just really reflected on building little by little every day. And that's really all it takes. And the business that we had built it thrived for 5.5 years. And eventually, my sister went back to work at her full-time job. So it was just my mom and myself, and we had a couple employees. Again, she did all the baking, I did the business, and we had a professional kitchen here in Las Vegas, and we did farmers markets. We had some really big clients that were selling our treats here locally. And unfortunately, my mom had passed away unexpectedly. And it was, of course, incredibly devastating. She was not just my mom, but my best friend, my business partner.
Yeah.
And what really hurt Cynthia is she loved the business. That was her passion. That was her joy. She was retired, but that's what brought her joy and her passion. So I did try to continue it after she had passed away, and it just didn't feel the same. It
Mm,
really didn't. And what's very interesting is about 6 months after she passed away, we secured a huge contract with a huge player here in Las Vegas, a sandwich shop out here that's actually nationwide. And it was very interesting because it was the one place my mom always wanted us to sell our treats. It's where we used to go to lunch all the time. It was incredibly incredible that we had secured that contract. And we did start selling our treats in there for about 4 months. And although it could have led to my legacy of selling treats, I couldn't move forward with it anymore. I did not have the same passion about
mm,
it. And believe me when I tell you, I put so much time, energy,
sure.
focus, money, and energy into building this business. Closing it was so hard. And I, at one time, thought I was letting my mom down by
Mm,
closing it because she was so passionate about it. But a very close friend of mine who worked in the kitchen with me after my mom had passed told me that my mom's passion was getting to do it with me. It wasn't the business itself, it was spending time with me, which that was it for me, was spending
That's
time with
right.
her. We had so much fun together, and so I didn't have the passion anymore, and so I interestingly, Cynthia, when I was working full time and building the business, I was also writing my first book, and again, just little bits at a time, 5 to
Right.
10 minutes every day
Right.
for 5.5 years, built this book. So the day I closed the business, the very next day I published my first book. So I felt like I was, no pun intended, closing one chapter and
Yes.
moving into my authorship.
Right. Your new author era. And what's compelling about that is I think so often, so you mentioned a couple things that struck me. One is guilt. And I work with a lot of men and women in particular statistically carry a whole lot more guilt about everything, right? We're guilty. We feel guilty
Yeah.
about everything.
Yes,
Um,
we do.
and so, one of the things having to address and realize that sometimes it's time to let go of something. Sometimes circumstances change. The sense of purpose, what mattered at one point matters differently, right? We evolve, we grow, we change, circumstances change. And being okay, taking time to process, right? And this wasn't
Mhm.
my so a tragic situation where you had to make that, but that i- is a life experience that the person listening might have been going through, right? Like I'm clinging to something for maybe the reason, maybe those reasons don't make sense anymore, and maybe it's time to let go. I've graduated, and there's something new. There's a new door to open, as was with yours. I real quick, I wanna harken back when you were talking about, 5 years and, or 3 years living in burnout, having been a CHRO at some pretty sizable organizations and talent acquisition being one of the functions, obviously. um, I don't know any person in talent acquisition over the last 10 years that hasn't been in constant churn,
Yeah.
especially in some of the industries that I've been in, healthcare being one of them. I mean, some of my clients are still in talent acquisition and healthcare, and I think it's a bit comes with the territory. But this idea of doing something else that fills your cup, and sometimes that thing isn't in your office, isn't in your day job. I think that also speaks to some of our Gen Z, because you may not be getting and you may not be seeking your complete sense of purpose in your day job. It may be that that's something you're really good at, you went to school for, and it pays the bills and it makes a lot of sense, but that doesn't mean you have to give up on the thing that you are passionate about, that does fill your cup, that does play to your strengths and talents. Um, one of the things I wanna come back to is you mentioned that you sort of had this awakening when this epiphany came, this candidate made this comment and you're like, "That's it, that's what I need to do." And I can relate to that. I feel like I've had a lot of those moments. Sometimes I liken them to divine intervention. Um, what were some of the signs or the cues that maybe you weren't paying attention to that were symptoms of burnout? So that the person listening, none of us wanna live in burnout for 3 years, right? We know that's psychologically draining, it taxes our bodies physically, et cetera. When in hindsight, and I'm not sure if you covered this in the book because I haven't had the privilege of reading it yet because it's not quite available, but talk about that. What would you say to the person listening, like, be aware of these things, that might be a signal that it's time to break up with burnout?
I love this question because I wish someone would have told me this back then because as I mentioned, I didn't realize I was in burnout at that time. I just thought it was what you do when you're successful. And looking back, the perfect word, hindsight, looking back, there were so many red flags and signals that I should have been paying attention to. And you're absolutely right, Cynthia. Burnout attacks us mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And as I've done research on the book and been able to speak with so many wonderful professionals that have given me their experience, I realized that we all have a lot of commonality, but we also have, there's a lot of variety to what people experience in burnout. And for me, physically, or for me personally, rather, it was the biggest thing was I dreaded going to work every single day.
Mm,
I had an existential dread of going to work every single day, and when I got there, everything was frustrating to me. I took
mhm.
everything so personally, every email or message or coworker comment or my boss's mood, I took so personally, and that's definitely not who I am personally. I'm a very optimistic, glass half full, social butterfly person, but I could feel that I was starting to snap at my coworkers for menial things that again I was taking personally, and that really should have been signs. I mean, for 3 years, I dreaded going to work every single day.
Mhm.
And to your point, I did love what I did. I love meeting with these candidates and pairing them with life-changing careers, the same opportunity I was given at
Yeah.
that organization. And so to dread going to work every day, and then when I get there, taking everything so personally. I had my
Mm,
emotions tied to that position, and most of it was because that was my entire identity. To
right.
our earlier point, I had nothing else. I had nothing. Yeah, of course, I had my husband and my dogs and my family and my friends, but I had nothing that was mine. That was my entire identity. Was my
Mhm.
job. Just like many of, I'm sure, listeners right now, is
Yes.
their entire job is everything to them, and that's okay if you are fulfilled and happy doing it, but most people aren't. They're exhausted. And during my research, Cynthia, I found that so many people had deep physical symptoms.
Mhm.
They would be tired all day, but then they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. They had constant headaches. They had, uh, stomach issues and just physical symptoms. Luckily, I'm grateful that I didn't experience those, but just one of the experiences that, for anyone listening, if you are experiencing constant headaches, restlessness at night, but exhausted all day, that's probably your burnout. It's your
Yeah.
body telling you that you are exhausted. You need
Mm.
something, and of course, it all starts in the mind. So you
Right.
need something that is in stimulating to you mentally and emotionally so you can take the that such attachment to your job and give it to something else, because my entire book is about leaving burnout without leaving your job. To your very point,
Mhm.
so many professionals built this career, keep the paycheck, keep the benefits, but bring something into your life that fulfills your heart, your soul, and that gives you joy. Again,
Mm.
we talked about earlier, but even if it's only 20 minutes a day, it is life changing.
Absolutely. I shared with you in the pre-call, and I think I've shared on the show before. I was working full time, and it's written directly in chapter 1 of Now Near Next. I was feeling a bit restless. So for me, listening to how you were defining some of the signals of burnout. Actually, some of those resonate. So perhaps it was a combination of restlessness and burnout. Um, but my choice at that point was it's time to write the book. I needed some stimulation outside of the day job. Loved my job, loved the team that I worked with. Um was busy. It wasn't as though I needed something else on my plate, but I am an intellectually curious person and always need sort of that next thing to stimulate. And so it was like, well, I'll write the book. That will be the thing that brings me that next layer of joy. One of the things that comes to my mind as you're talking, especially that you've been blessed with working for the same organization for 17 years. I love the idea that you can break up with burnout and keep your day job where you are, or if need be elsewhere. But one of the things I'm curious about, and I assume perhaps somebody listening is curious about, is how do you get your boss and your company to be okay with a side hustle like the bakery, for example, that
Mhm.
obviously takes time, it takes commitment, and it's not exactly a hidden thing like rental property where, it's sort of under the radar. Um, how would you advise the person listening to go about that in a way that feels authentic, that they don't feel that feels like with integrity, um, and hopefully that the company goes along with the idea?
Yes. This is a hot topic, Cynthia, because a lot of the professionals I spoke to that said this exact sentence is, oh, my boss would never allow that.
Mm,
And I just want to put this statement out there is that we work for companies, they don't own us, they don't own our time. And as long as you are doing nothing nefarious or you are not working on their time on your side project and you're doing this path with my favorite word that you said, integrity and honesty, they really don't have any deciding factor in it, your
that's
employer.
right.
But I do advise to be open about it. And it was something that I was so excited about. I wanted to tell everyone. And it didn't make me a worse employee. Again, it made me a better employee because now I
Yes.
was more excited. I had more energy. I was more pumped to go to work. And so I do want to say this very clearly is when you keep your job, keep working with excellence. And again, most of the people that we're speaking to, Cynthia, and that I've spoken to, are high performing
Right.
professionals. They can't just turn off that high achieving, perfectionism and being the best at their job. They can't just turn it off. So they're
That's right.
they're still going to operate to the fullest at their job, and be respectful of your employer's time. They're paying you to be there. When you are there, be there and be performing at your highest level. But outside of those hours, that's your time. I mean, your
Absolutely.
employer can't tell you, don't go play with your dog or don't go to dinner with your husband. They can't tell you what to do outside of the hours, the working hours. And as long as it's nothing that's competing with them, what you're doing with them. If you were selling a product and then on the side go and selling the same product, that I don't think operates with integrity. But opening a bakery and writing a book has nothing to do with talent acquisition. And I was just very open and honest with my bosses, my colleagues, and it became a fun thing to talk about, in our weekly meetings. And oh, Alicia, tell us what's going on, and with the treat business. And they bought treats from me. A lot of my bosses and even higher up bosses would buy treats for the team, and so do I love this question because I think a lot of professionals out there are scared. What will my
Absolutely.
employer think? Yes, yes. So I'm so
Mhm.
glad you asked that because they think, I'm not allowed to. You are absolutely allowed to. This is your permission slip right now that your employer pays you for the time you're with them, not for the time your own time. So don't be afraid to be honest with them. Hey, on the weekends, I'm doing this project. I'm super excited about it, and talk about it. And I mentioned that in the book, that to talk about it. And honestly, it makes you more excited to want to do it and keeps you accountable because then people start coming up to you, how's that business going? And you want to, continue and be excited about it. But when you're on your own time, remember that's your own time.
Yeah, that is such important advice, and feedback. I will tell you from personal experience, um, when I started working on my next, right? So our whole mantra is start working on your future today, do your day job with excellence, but identify your next and be working a path to get there. Exactly what you've done, which is why I say you're the poster child of now your next. And so as I was doing that, right, drinking my own champagne, so I started writing the book, I had researched, I was going to follow through on, okay, what is my next? And how am I going to start working toward it with the idea that my encore career would be 3 to 5 years from now? I would be an author, a keynote speaker, and an executive coach. And so on my time, I started to get board certified coaching, um, create an LLC with a coaching certification. For the person listening that doesn't know, you have to have so many hours that you clock of demonstrating coaching, and so you do a lot of unpaid coaching first, and then you have to have so many hours of paid coaching, but you're practicing, and so you charge a nominal fee because it has to be paid, right? So I set up this little website, and I was charging $25 for an hour of coaching, which is anybody that coaches with me now
So low.
knows that it's nowhere near that. But
No.
the right, and not sustainable to build a life on at that point in my career. I will never forget a senior leader saying to me, "So, you're starting this coaching business," and someone in the company had seen the little advertisement on Facebook or something like, "Hey, if you wanna get coached, get me cheap while you can," and text it to this leader. And subsequently, questions around my loyalty to the organization. So I put that out there to say this. Number one, Alicia, you are blessed in that you work for a company that has poured into you and invested in you and supported you, which is exactly what they should do. Absolutely. Um,
Great.
and you're an example of the fact that it is a win-win because you show up even more grateful to the organization that allows you to also do what you love and are great at, right? And do other things. So they're getting all of this loyalty, commitment, engagement from you because you're fulfilled, right? And they're not losing anything. They're just gaining a more engaged employee. Um, but if you're the person, so it's a both and. I would tell you, yes, bring it up. Yes, speak your truth. Do all the things that Alicia said in terms of it needs to be with integrity and it needs to be not in a competing space, et cetera, et cetera. Do it on your own time. Value your organization's investment in you during the time that you're on the clock, if you will. But if you are met with resistance or concerns of loyalty, I believe that has to do more with the person on the other side of that conversation feeling threatened, jealous,
Absolutely.
envious, pick a word. And that alone might be a sign that yet another door is intended to open at that point because it should not keep you from on your own time, pursuing your dreams and working on your next. Would you agree?
Agreed, agreed.
Yeah,
I would say wholeheartedly in that. And you made a great point. If someone is resistant to that, it says more about them than what you're doing. And a lot of times some of the professionals I've spoken with, they don't want to leave their career, but maybe they can find another department within that same organization, a different leader. But again, I agree with you. If it is something that you're getting a lot of resistance from and it's just not a welcoming feeling, then it may be time to look elsewhere for employment because I
yeah,
do feel that you should be able to be supported in what you do. And you made a great point. Cynthia, am so grateful for the career I have and the leaders that I do have. And, I've been there 18 years, so not every leader was my favorite along the way. But as a whole, it has been such a welcoming and warming experience.
yeah. Well, let's talk about what you're doing now because
Okay.
bakery business was kind of chapter one. You've got another book coming out, which is something I know you're in the final stages of, but you also coach and spend time there. So talk a little bit about the work that you're doing and this new side hustle, passion project, etc.
Yes, I am, and I love to listen to your experience in coaching because I'm in the very early stages of it. And my mom always told me I would be a great cheerleader, which kind of stuck with me because I am very, rah 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 of anyone that's following their dreams and anything I can do to support. And once I close a business and I published my first book, and I had that excitement of entrepreneurship from the business that I knew that there was something else. And I will be a lifelong writer and author. So that will always continue after Breakup with Burnout comes out. I already have three other books in my mind that I'm so that will always be a thing. But as I was writing Breakup with Burnout, I wanted to build it beyond just the words, but the book. And coaching just felt like the natural progression for me to be able to do that. And I've had two clients so far, both non-paid, paid in experience. So it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because I felt like I wanted to be a wonderful coach and get that experience. So those that are going to pay me for their time. And so I have worked with two individuals that paid me an experience. And it was a transformative experience, not just for
Yeah.
them, but for me. And the coaching is to help professional women break up with burnout. So it's my book brought to life in coaching. And that is something that I will continue to build on the side as well. And my leadership knows, my company knows that I'm
Yeah.
building this book and this coaching on the side. And once again, they have been really, really supportive about my journey. And so the real focus right now is finishing the book. And, I'm almost done with that final draft. And then it'll go into editing and then publishing. And I feel like once I get that out and have that physical copy in my hand, I can start doing a lot more marketing and really bring the coaching to the next level. But real
Yes.
focus on the book right now, but it will definitely lead me down a path of consistent coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanna tell a little story on you, and I hope that doesn't embarrass you, but I it one of the things my hope is that the person listening is feeling so inspired as I feel in chatting with you, and that if they're second guessing, maybe pursuing something or wondering, if they are entitled or allowed or have permission, right, to do these things, um, one of the things that really struck me about Alicia, I'm gonna tell this little story, is that, so podcasting is an interesting space, right? I have been declined being a guest on shows because I don't have a large enough social following in terms of what they're looking for, right? They want people with hundreds of thousands of Instagram and all the things. Um, and I have had guests that have declined being on my show because we aren't yet producing at the level of Mel Robbins yet. At the level of Mel
Yet. I
Robbins,
was
right?
just gonna say yet.
Yet,
Yeah.
yet. And so it's largely about, getting followership and you want people to hear the message and so on and so forth. And so we've been really blessed. We've had a lot of guests on this show. And the point of this and what I want to celebrate, Alicia and you, and I want the person listening to hear is that we originally became introduced through an agency that was helping to find podcasts really should be on, and then we ended up having to cancel our shows kind of shifted, and we were booked out for months and months. And you took the opportunity, Alicia, to reach out to me directly and say, "Listen, I know we got canceled. I'd really, really love to be on the show. I know I don't I'm starting this up. This is the phase I'm in and building out my, my career in this space. Um, but I have these things to offer, and I think these things would resonate with your audience, and I would be really grateful if you'd consider it." Let me tell you, for the person listening, she had me at hello because I actually have goosebumps because
Same.
that is putting your aspirations into the universe. That is putting your aspirations into the universe. And that struck such a chord with me that I could not wait to get you on the show and have your message be heard and have your story be told because you are an example of what every person listening should be doing. And you are here because you were tenacious, because you didn't stop at the first decline, because you took the next step and reached out personally. And to me, there's so much lesson in that for every person listening. People are not mind readers. And if you don't put yourself out there and have a little bit of tenacity behind it, a lot of no's are gonna happen before you get yeses. And, so I wanna celebrate you. I wanna celebrate the fact that you have navigated working these side businesses so beautifully, but also that you self-advocate, and that is to me, that is a beautiful thing. So, thank you for that. Thank you for self-advocating so that I have the privilege of learning from you.
Can I just reciprocate with thank you for saying yes? Because you're absolutely right. You have to be your own agent out in the world, especially when you're starting and you're new. You're going to get a lot of no's. I did telemarketing early on, and I would get 100 no's to one yes. And that really, really stuck with me. It's a huge world out there. We're all busy and there you're gonna get so many no's, but there is gonna be someone that says, "Yes, I guarantee it," and you have to fight for yourself. You really,
Mm,
really do, and that is just such a powerful message, Cynthia, that just because someone says no, it's not always no, it's not right now. So
you're
don't
right.
be afraid to reach out directly and say, "Hey, I'm still interested." And they may not follow up right away, but it may be a month or a few months down the road. But it's such a great message that yes, you are going to get no's, but don't be afraid of those no's. And you're
That's
right.
right.
I think so many people don't create that agency for themselves because they're afraid of the no. But you'll get a yes eventually.
That's right.
So
And
thank you for that story.
absolutely, and be the person that says yes. Be the person that says yes
Yes.
too. If you
Great
are in a
message.
if you are in a position of power, influence, or ability, be the person that says yes. So many people said yes to me early on. Early on, just in the last 2 years when I started this business, where, I had very little other than a successful corporate career, but I didn't have a lot of
Sure.
entrepreneurship to point to. And I had people who took a chance on me who said yes, who didn't have to. And I had a
Hmm.
lot less to offer them than they had to offer me. Um, but I made it my passion to not let them down and to make sure that that yes was one that they would, never regret, and more important, that
Yes.
always be grateful that they said yes. So, coming full circle, let's talk about when you think about breaking up with burnout, for the person that's driving in their car listening to this pod, or if they're on a jog, um, and maybe they're thinking, "Oh, I have to go to work tomorrow," or, "Oh, it's Sunday and I have the dreaded Sunday blues because Monday's coming." Right? What's the first piece of advice you would give them as a way of just getting off jump?
The first suggestion out there is right now, today, make yourself a daily appointment on your calendar. I call it the joy appointment. And because we all live and breathe by our inbox and our calendars. So make sure it is on your calendar 20 minutes a day. If you can do more, great, but 20 minutes a day and dedicate that time to what brings you joy. And
Mm,
again, there is so many different things out there. And I want to say that I have worked with some women that don't even know what that joy is. And that is even better because you get to start experimenting. Just, take that pottery class or sign up for photography or take a scuba dive lesson, just whatever it is that brings you joy, you will find it. If you don't know what it is, you will find it. But you have to start 20 minutes a day. And even more importantly, don't just put it on your calendar, but actually keep it. Keep it like it's, in a meeting with your CEO, or
Right.
something that you would make so important and paramount on your calendar, but put it on your calendar, stick to it for your own self. And it's not for anyone else, it's for you. You're not doing this for anyone else, but for you and your mind and your soul. And so that is always the first step, is to make that joy appointment 20 minutes a day. And for those of you that know what brings you joy, just start doing it. Just start doing it, whatever it is. And again, those that don't, start experimenting. And when you find it, you'll know.
Yeah, that thing that just gives you that intrinsic satisfaction. It could be taking a bubble bath, it could be taking a walk, it could be singing, playing albums, doodling.
Yeah.
I started puzzling recently. I have a puzzle. I got a little overzealous about a 1,000-piece puzzle.
That's a lot.
That was ridiculous. I had no idea. So, I put that one back in the box. I got the border and then I was exhausted. So, I have a 500-piece puzzle now and I'm making better progress. But find the thing that gives you joy. I love that. We conclude all of the episodes with our guests with one thing that you would advise the person listening to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing. What sage advice would you leave them with?
The start, I think I'm gonna just reiterate, to put that
Sure.
joy appointment on. That is the
Yeah.
first thing that you want to start. We all get caught up in, where do I start? Where do I begin? What do I do? That is it. Make that appointment 20 minutes a day and keep it every single day to your joy. That is what is going to break that burnout away, is to inject joy into your life. I promise you. To stop doing, the one thing to stop doing, Cynthia, I'm going to say something pretty bold and then I'll explain it, but I'm going to say stop caring. And what I mean by that, don't stop caring about your job or your family. Stop putting emotion into every little thing. Stop caring if your boss is in a bad mood. Stop caring if you got a rude response on an email or a message. Stop caring if someone said no to your podcast. Just keep moving forward. Stop attaching so much emotion. A lot easier said than done. I will admit it. It takes a lot of time, energy, and practice. So that is something I work on in coaching and in my book. So, but just think about it from a very high level, is stop attaching so much emotion to things that don't need emotion attached to it. And I'm going to say continue to operate with integrity and honesty and humor. Bring some levity into your life. Smile, and smile when you don't feel like it. I've heard that the brain believes the face. So if you're in a bad mood, smile, and it really does put you in a different state of mind. So continue to operate with integrity and honesty, and bring that levity in.
Yeah, I always love humor. That to me
Same.
gets you through a lot of things if you can keep a sense of humor. Well, Alicia, this has been an absolute joy and so many great just nuggets of information and wisdom, not only in the elements of your book, Break Up with Burnout, which is coming out in June. So everybody be watching for that. But also on your own lived experience, the legacy that you're creating, how you're honoring your life and what's important to you, as well as I think your mom is quite proud of all that you have continued to do and all the things that the doors you're continuing to knock down. So I wish you nothing but great success as you continue to move forward. I have a feeling I'm going to be on your podcast in the next couple of years, and I will hope to get an invitation. I would look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today, Cynthia. I had the best time. Thank you.
Well, that concludes today's episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. Be sure to keep an eye out for Elisha Meeks. We're going to put all of her information in the show notes. Connect with her on LinkedIn and all the socials. Keep an eye out for her book. And make sure that if this podcast is something that you know, another person that could really deserve the opportunity to break up with burnout, be sure to forward this episode today. Until next time, you've got this. Congratulations on choosing to invest in yourself. I know your time is precious. Thank you for spending it here with me. I believe in helping you look up, step forward, and fully realizing your potential. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you know someone who would benefit, please share this episode with them. Let's stay connected. Visit me at dr-cynthia.com, and you can find me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Until next time, remember, boldly start working on your future today.